Okay, so there's a company that made $14 billion last year. It controls a third of the entire Swiss watch industry. There's a multi-year wait list just to give them your money, and Wall Street would kill to buy a piece of it. But they can't. Nobody can. Because Rolex is not owned by a billionaire, a family, or a corporation. It's owned by a charity, a non-profit foundation in Geneva that will never, legally, structurally, permanently, let anyone buy it or take it public. And the reason why involves a 12-year-old orphan, a stolen inheritance, and one of the most insane business decisions of the 20th century. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The year is 1893. A 12-year-old German kid named Hans Wilsdorf has just lost both his parents. His mother died first. His father followed a year later. 3 kids, no parents, no safety net. Now, you'd think the family business would at least keep them afloat. The Wilsdorfs ran a successful iron goods company. Decent money. But here's where the story takes its first ugly turn. Hans's uncles, the guys who were supposed to look after him, immediately sold the family business, pocketed the money, and shipped all 3 kids off to a boarding school in Bavaria. I want you to sit with that for a second. You're 12, you're an orphan, and the only adults in your life just liquidated your inheritance and sent you away. Most people would be destroyed by that. Hans Wilsdorf basically decided to use it as fuel. He threw himself into school, excelled at math, learned French and English, and at 19 years old, he left Germany for good. He showed up in Switzerland with nothing, got a job sorting pearls at an import company, and then a friend told him about a watchmaking town called La Chaux-de-Fonds. Hans went there, got a clerk job at a big watch firm for 80 Swiss francs a month, and spent 2 years winding hundreds of pocket watches every single day. That's where it clicked. Not the watches themselves, but a problem with them that nobody else seemed to care about. Here's the thing about 1900. If you wanted to know the time, you reached into your pocket, pulled out a big metal disc, checked it, and put it back. That was the deal. Wristwatches existed, sure, but they were considered jewelry for women. They were inaccurate, fragile, and frankly, if a man wore one, people looked at him funny. Hans Wilsdorf, 22 years old, living in London now, working at another watch firm, looked at this situation and thought, pocket watches are dead. People just don't know it yet. That's like standing in 2005 and saying physical keyboards on phones are finished. You sound crazy, until you're right. In 1905, Hans and his brother-in-law Alfred Davis pooled their money and founded a little company called Wilsdorf and Davis. They imported Swiss movements, put them in watch cases, and started selling wristwatches. But Hans had a branding problem. Wilsdorf and Davis is not exactly a name that rolls off the tongue in London, Paris, and New York. So he spent weeks shuffling 5-letter combinations, because the name had to be short enough to fit on a tiny watch dial, and eventually landed on something. Rolex. Short. Sharp. Sounds the same in every language. He registered the trademark in 1908. Now he just needed the world to believe wristwatches were worth buying. For the next 20 years, Rolex steadily built a reputation for accuracy. They got the first ever wristwatch chronometer rating from Switzerland. They earned a precision certificate from a London observatory. Solid stuff, but let's be real. Certificates don't exactly set the world on fire. What Hans needed was a moment, a headline, something so dramatic that people couldn't ignore it. In 1926, Rolex invented the Oyster, the first truly waterproof wristwatch. Revolutionary technology. But how do you prove to the world that a watch is actually waterproof? You put it in the English Channel. In 1927, a British swimmer named Mercedes Gleitz was about to attempt a vindication swim across the channel. She'd already crossed it once, but a rival's false claim had thrown her record into doubt. Hans Wilsdorf saw the opportunity and basically said, "Wear my watch." She tied the Rolex Oyster around her neck with a ribbon. She swam for over 10 hours in freezing water before she had to be pulled out. She didn't finish the swim, but the watch worked perfectly, every second. The next day, Hans took out a full-page ad in the London Daily Mail, and overnight, Rolex went from solid Swiss watchmaker to the watch that defied the English Channel. That right there, that's the moment Rolex became Rolex. Not because of the technology, because Hans Wilsdorf understood something most engineers never figure out. Nobody cares what your product can do until you show them in a way they can't forget. He literally invented the modern brand ambassador in 1927. Now, here's where the story gets really interesting to me. Because if it ended here, Rolex would just be another successful luxury brand. What happened next is what makes it one of the strangest companies in history. During World War I, Hans had already relocated Rolex from London to Geneva, partly because of British taxes on imports, partly because being a German in England during a war with Germany was not exactly a walk in the park. His last name alone was a liability. He kept building. The Oyster Perpetual in 1931, the first waterproof self-winding wristwatch. The Datejust in 1945, first wristwatch to show the date on the dial. The Submariner in 1953, the legendary diver that could go 100 meters deep. Innovation after innovation. But in 1944, something happened that changed everything. His wife, Florence, died. They had no children. Hans Wilsdorf was now 63 years old. He'd built one of the most valuable companies in the world, and he had nobody to leave it to. Remember, this is a man whose own uncles stole his inheritance when he was 12. He knew exactly what happens when a business falls into the wrong hands. So he made a decision that, personally, I think is one of the most fascinating moves in corporate history. He created the Hans Wilsdorf Foundation, a private charitable trust, and transferred 100% of Rolex into it, every single share. When he died in 1960, the foundation became the sole owner, and under Swiss law, the bylaws he wrote made it virtually impossible to ever sell Rolex, take it public, or let any outside investor in. Ever. Think about what that means. The most coveted luxury brand on earth, $14 billion in annual revenue, a third of the Swiss watch market, $100 million marketing deals with tennis and golf, is literally owned by a charity. It cannot be bought. It will never have shareholders. It will never file a quarterly earnings report. Every franc of profit either goes back into the company or funds schools, hospitals, and cultural projects in Geneva. And honestly, I think that's why Rolex has been able to do what no other luxury brand can. Because when you don't answer to Wall Street, you can deliberately underproduce your watches, keeping wait lists years long and demand permanently higher than supply. You can refuse to discount. You can spend a decade perfecting a single new movement instead of rushing products to market because some analyst wants growth this quarter. Rolex makes roughly 1 million watches a year. They could make more. They choose not to. And that artificial scarcity, combined with a century of earned trust, is why a used Rolex Submariner sells for more than its original retail price. It's one of the only consumer products on Earth where that's consistently true. All because a 12-year-old orphan whose inheritance was stolen decided that when he built something great, nobody would ever be able to take it away. Not from him. Not from anyone. Not ever. The next time someone tells you Rolex is overpriced, remember this. The company is owned by a charity, it can never be sold, and the guy who built it was an orphan who showed up in London with nothing and ended up creating the single most recognizable luxury brand in human history. That's not a watch company. That's a monument. If this story changed how you think about the brands you buy, subscribe to Boardroom Files. I dig into the stories behind the world's biggest business empires every single week. Hit subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.